Shalom, shalom. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero. I want to talk on a subject that is being heard a lot through the different media, social medias. And this is the issue of the rebuilding of the temple and the coming of the Messiah, the Mashiach. Obviously, the interchange that's going around has to do and circles around the actual temple issues. And by that I mean, of course, there is a concept in the Torah that speaks about the destruction of the temple when the abomination that causes desolation takes place. Now, by Christians, this is still in the future, which means that they look at the rebuilding of the third temple as the fixation for this being fulfilled. Yet, historically, let's be honest, it has already taken place. And that brought down the second temple, or the second Beit HaMikdash. And this was all spoken of in the book of Daniel. And also you will find evidence to that in the Christian literature, that too took place during the first century, which even the Christian Paul makes reference to that in his letters to 2 Thessalonians. Now, I want to bring this up because there's just so much misinformation regarding this theological basis, biblical basis. We understand that once the third temple takes place and begins to be built, there's going to be all types of insinuation that there is going to be an abomination that caused desolation, and the revelation of the Antichrist will take place, contrary to the Hebrew Scripture, but very in sync to the Christian eschatology. The very basis of this issue is in chapter 9 of Daniel. And there are some words that we need to make very clear what it refers to when we learn and study the book of Daniel, and Daniel in particular. We read in chapter 9, verse 22, that he enabled me, referring to the angel of the Lord, and he spoke with me, verse 22, and he said, Daniel, now I've come forth to make you skillful in understanding. In the beginning of your supplications a word came forth, and I've come to tell you, for you have a desirable qualities. Now contemplate the word and understand the vision. 70 weeks of years have been decreed upon your people and upon the city of your sanctuary to terminate the transgression and to end sin and to expiate iniquity and to bring the eternal righteousness and to seal up the vision in the prophets and to anoint the Holy of Holies. And you shall know and understand that from the emergence of the word to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed king shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks it will return. Continue. And be built streets and moats, but in troubled times. And after the 62 weeks, the anointed one will be cut off, and he will be no more. And the people of the coming monarch will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and his end will come about inundation and until the end of the war, and it will be cut off into desolation. This is what the Christian Bible refers to in Matthew 24, when Jesus spoke to his followers regarding the desolation, the abomination that causes desolation, that Daniel spoke of. Now, all of this has already taken place. You say, no, it can't have, because we don't see that taking place. It has taken place, and we will take a look of history and show and demonstrate that, in fact, the desolation, the abomination that causes desolation took place in the first century. And it says in verse 27, he will strengthen the covenant with the princes for 1 week and a half a week. He will abolish the sacrifice and meal offerings on the high among abominations, will be a dumb one, until the destruction and extermination befall the dumb one. Now you ask yourself, who is the dumb one? All of this, All of this that we read in the book of Daniel has taken already place. And it was during the period of time of the Roman Empire. Now let's go back again, go verse to verse commentary. And after those weeks, the anointed one will be cut off. Therefore it mentioned a whole week. But it will be done and take place during troubled time. Now, interesting enough, we read that this anointed one that makes reference to be cut off refers to the only king that was alive and in existence, King of Judea, King Agrippa, who you also read in the book of Acts that he was a king. Now, this king was not considered of Jewish descent, which, as you know, a king to rule and be considered a king over Judea had to be of Jewish stock. He was not of Jewish stock. He was a convert, a righteous convert, like many of that time that were, who was ruling at the time of the destruction, and he will be slain. And exactly this is what happened in history. And he will be no more. Ve'ein lo, it says in the Hebrew. And he will not have. The meaning is that he will not be. He will no longer be in this world. This repetition of preceding clause makes it very clear he would be cut off. The anointed one. The expression here, which rouses many of the Christian world, is the word Mashiach, translated in vernacular Greek, Christ, Latin, Christos. This is the only expression of a prince and dignitary, according to Rashi and Malbim, who explains the term Mashiach refers to two offices of the king and the high priest. Both Agrippa the king and the high priest will be slain, and there will be no one to succeed them, to replace them. Exactly what happened in history. Both Caiaphas and both Agrippa were slain. They were cut off. The city and the sanctuary, literally the city and the Holy One, and the people of the coming monarch will destroy. Who's the coming monarch? This was Titus and his armies. Josephus makes reference of this invasion and this destruction, utter destruction of the temple, and how this took place. That is, Titus and his armies. Ibn Ezra explains that Vespasian, the Roman general, who invaded Jerusalem with his son Titus, and they are mentioned here again below, and his end will come about by inundation. And his end will be damnation and destruction, for he will inundate the power of the kingdom through the Messiah, and until the end of wars of Gog, the city will exist. Cut off into destruction, literally destruction of desolation. And he will be strengthened a covenant for the princes for 1 week. Rirabim, for the princes, the great ones, the officers. Rabbe, the king. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 39, verse 13, a quotation is not exact, but it's very similar. Compare this with strengthen. Titus will strengthen an agreement with the princes of Israel. It was called Pas Romana. The 1 week he will promise them will strengthen a covenant for peace of 7 years, but within the 7 years he will abrogate, he will break that promise, and he will abolish the sacrifice and the meal offerings. And this is exactly what took place in the first century. It was Titus and the Vespasian general that basically put an end to the sacrificial offerings and systems in the temple. Just read history. Chapter 8, verse 26 says, and in tranquility he will destroy many. Though a covenant of tranquility, he will destroy them. In other words, through this Pas Romana, he would bring them to their own exile. And on high among the abominations will be the dumb one. Now this is a pejorative for the pagan deities. On the high place among the abominations, a disgusting thing or things, he will place the dumb one, the pagan deity, We know that Titus brought into the Holy of Holies swines and pigs and did all types of atrocities inside the holy place of the temple, which is dumb like a silent stone. High, kenef, on the wings of an expression of a height, the wings of a flying bird, as it were. So all of this that we read about the abomination that caused desolation and the destruction and extermination befalls the dumb one, and the ruling of the abomination will endure until the day of destruction and extermination will be decreed upon it and will befall in the days of King Messiah. Now here we see the possibility that this continual destruction and fall will continue even during the days of Melech HaMashiach. And this we read also in the continuing verse. And it's understood that the very beginning, according to Rashi, Darius the Mede reigned for 4 years. Ahasuerus reigned 14 years. With 2 years of Darius the Persian, we already have 20 years. Ibn Ezra and Rav Sadia go and explains this verse literally, that Daniel fasted 3 weeks, which is 21 days, not 21 years. He fasted during the month of Nisan, and on the 24th day of the month he saw the vision, as in verse 4 and 6. However, as we read and understand, until the destruction and extermination befall the dumb one, before the dumb one, this is Tatach, reach, the total destruction will descend upon the image of the pagan deity and upon its worshippers. Now all of this you'll read in chapter 9, all the way to the end of the verse, which is verse 27. And here we find the idea of the anti-Messiah, or the one that tries to take place as a Messiah figure. And this one is called also a dumb one, an idol, an image. This one will be destroyed also. So you see, my friends, those of you who are pushing this idea that the third temple will be built, and it will be that third temple that will cause the abomination, the desolation that causes abomination, that makes reference to the book of Daniel, you see it has already taken place. So you have some things that are theologically, eschatological, incorrect. The third temple, which is, some would even argue, was even mentioned in the book of Ezekiel, but nevertheless, there is a reference to the third temple throughout other books of the prophet. And in the third temple will be the restoration of the religious orders for the whole entire world. The world was at peace and was at harmony while the second temple was alive, because the worship of one God is essential for world global peace. We're not talking about political peace. We're talking about global blessings. It was the service of the temple that brought about double blessings upon the nations of the world. And this is true. So please, look at it again, study again. You'll see that it has no reference whatsoever to a third abomination, desolation. That already took place. It took place in the second temple. And all of the sacrificial systems was put to stop by the Roman Empire. That's why we have no longer a temple or system of sacrifice, because Rome destroyed it until the day it becomes restored. And may it be soon in our days. Shalom.